Transitions from one president to the next are never easy and never as orderly as we would want them to be. But reports of chaos within the Trump transition team have some Washingtonians concerned. Ed Berliner offers some insight on the process itself, arguing that Americans need to ask themselves one simple question in light of what we're witnessing.
The time for negotiations is over. You will hand over your delegates, and you will serve on in my cabinet. And we will forget that any of this ever happened. Because if you don't, I swear to God, I will never, ever forget.
Fictional as he may be, President Frank Underwood speaks with sharp clarity as to what happens in every administration. A leader who bends people to his or her will because they are the ones in charge. And often those who sit at the top, watching with occasional bemusement as the game of jockeying for positions of power begins.
I think there is some confusion going on about a chain of command coming out of New York. Hopefully they'll get that settled pretty soon. I think they're going to need to do it because as this clock ticks, all of these decisions become more important, and you have to make them sooner with a little more authority and a little more forward thinking to make sure that they don't bump into anything in the future. I think they're going to get there, and I'm an optimist about that.
The abrupt departure of former Congressman Mike Rogers from the Donald Trump transition team cannot be casually explained away. Rogers was a steady hand in the navigation of Washington and putting together a reputable team. What is known and should be made clear is how at this moment, Trump and his inner circle are being lobbied by anyone and everyone who wants that cushy government gig.
The only person who knows is Donald Trump and an immediate circle around him that is very small, and hopefully they're not leaking. Anything else, when people say, I heard such and so is mentioned by whom? And so this is a time for gossip, for misinformation, for people to put their name out there because it's good there for their career. But it's impossible to guess other than the immediate, obvious first circle of people closest to Trump.
Should the American people demand a more orderly and open process? Let's begin there. JD, it's all yours.
Thanks, Ed. For more on all of this, we're pleased to be joined by our panel. Joining us via Skype from Atlanta, the co-founder of the Women Vote Trump PAC, Amy Kremer, and from Newsmax New York, our good friend who leans leftward, noted radio and TV commentator Ellis Henican. Amy, Trump fired back on Twitter amidst the reports that his transition team was in chaos. He tweeted, "The failing New York Times story is so totally wrong on transition. It is going so smoothly. Also, I've spoken to many foreign leaders." He went on to tweet, "Australia, New Zealand, and more. I'm always available to them. New York Times is just upset that they look like fools in their coverage of me." What do you make, Amy, first of the Times stories and then the Trump retorts?
Well, JD, they do get in a tizzy. They get their panties in a wad when they don't know what's going on. And he's been holed up in Trump Tower working with his transition team. Nobody's seen him until he snuck out last night and went to dinner. And they just had a complete meltdown. The press had a meltdown when he did that. But, you know, that's typical Trump to fire back. He's not going to take it. And just because they aren't on the inside and don't know what's going on doesn't give them the right to go out there and publish stuff that's completely false and inaccurate. No one knows what's going on except the people that have been inside that building and working with them. And we need to wait till they come out and tell us. Remember, this is the same media that said, you know, he was a spring fling, he was a fall fling, he was going to fizzle out, he would never make it this far. Well, here he is, president-elect. So let's let him do his job and tell us when he's ready.
Ellis, Democrat advisor David Axelrod urged Mr. Trump against going on Twitter so often. Mr. Axelrod believes it might have serious implications. Let's look and listen.
Donald Trump got elected by essentially ignoring all the norms of campaigning, and I think that he's not going to stop now. He's going to continue to do what he wants to do, including this. And he may find it relaxing. The danger is when you're president, I've said this many times with you and others, the things you say can send armies marching and markets tumbling.
So is that good, effective, friendly advice from one-time Obama advisor Axelrod, or is it overblowing a little bit of the nature of Mr. Trump's tweets?
I don't think Trump can help himself. I mean, I think it's an addiction, right? I mean, he likes the reaction. He wants to poke people, and he likes the cheer and the boo, and he likes to be the center of attention. So, I mean, short of a 12-step program or some kind of rehab, I don't think he can help himself. But briefly, JD, let's review the facts here. I understand you all are all upset about rumors and reports, but let's see if we can agree on a few facts, right? That Chris Christie was in charge of the transition. It was the great guy running everything. Now, he got abruptly fired.
Whoa, I got to stop you right there. Let me stop you right there. Let me stop you right there, Ellis. When you say he's a great guy, 6 months ago, or as recently as the trial, as recently as the trial on Bridgegate, the left was ready to hang Chris Christie out to dry.
I think Chris Christie is, excuse me, JD, I think Chris Christie is dreadful, but I think we can agree that he was in charge of the transition, he was running everything.
And had he stayed there, you would be beating the hell out of the fact that Christie is there. If he were still there, you'd be saying it's serious problems, it's ethically challenged.
JD, I'm having real trouble getting heard here. Can I try and get through
the floor is yours. The floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. I think we can agree that Mike Rogers, who is a highly respected Republican congressman, I believe maybe even a colleague of yours, head of the Intelligence Committee, was running all the foreign policy side of it. And then he was abruptly shown the door and hustled out. And I think we can agree that replacing him are people like Frank Gaffney, who is like some kind of way out there guy who was drummed out of the Reagan administration because he was so extreme. And I think we have a whole series. Those are facts. You can't deny those facts.
No, with all due respect, Ellis, they are perceptions. Let me fill in the rest of the facts. Mike Rogers is a friend.
What's not true,
but the fact is media reports also linked him. You may recall his wife had some big contracts, and he chose to leave Congress as the press was reporting he might be under an ethics cloud. That was certain to come up. So the rest of the story is not that these guys are saying, look, he's a friend of mine. I'm just laying out the potential traps.
Well, don't throw him under the bus, for goodness sake.
We would be naive if we think that Ellis, with this revisionist glowing report on these two model citizens who happen to be Republican, would have kept that up through the course of the transition had they maintained their positions there.
And JD, Frank Gaffney is not part of the campaign. Jeff Miller denied it today, and I believe Kellyanne Conway said he's not part of the campaign. I just read that probably an hour ago.
Transition,
so that was
I think, not the campaign, Amy.
Transition, yes. He is not part of the transition. He's not involved at all. He has not been contacted, is what he said. So he is not involved. You know, this man got himself through the primary, won the general election, and here he is, president-elect of the United States. He obviously has done something right. Let's give him a little bit of room to do the work that needs to be done. Mike Pence is working furiously with him. He's been in Washington today, meeting with the vice president. They are working. They have a team there together, and I believe in them. And until I hear otherwise, I'm not going to worry about it.
Well, Amy, let's review the facts a little bit, right? Because I understand you don't want me to judge any of these people, but I noticed, for instance, that Steve Bannon, right, who used to run something called Breitbart News, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's pretty ugly. I mean, there's some really harsh stuff there. He was peddling those racist and misogynistic
the reason I'm interrupting is because you asked.
The president-elect.
Excuse me. The reason you said, you may have been treating that rhetorically. I don't know if you know him. I don't know if you know Breitbart News. Steve Bannon happens to be a friend of mine. I've shared the microphone with him in talk radio. I find him to have an outstanding resume. I find Breitbart to be a publication that elicits a great deal of interest, and I believe the record shows he was pretty effective as Mr. Trump's strategist in the campaign, and he has a right to serve in the White House. So all the stuff from Harry Reid is a bit much. But listen, you guys are great sports.
Should we review some of the?
And we are.
We're going
to review that. We're going to review that and have more to talk about, Ellis. But that real four-letter word, time, is in our way. Amy and Ellis remain with us. You stay here too. Our invigorating discussion continues.